Welcome to episode 6 of Free to Speak. Once again, I'm Bobby and this is Paul. We're having a blast doing this, so we're enjoying all the comments that we get from people. We're slowly growing. I think we just had our biggest video, like the last video we did.
Yeah.
Was more than we've ever had, but still, you know,
there's a lot of room.
There's a lot of room for growth, I think that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
But we're growing, so we want to just thank everybody who's been watching us consistently from week to week. We want to thank all of you who have been commenting. Yeah. So we've been talking in previous weeks about wokeness and social media and many of the problems associated with that. And we kind of raised the question last week, is the reason that we're seeing the rise of some of these things, like the abuses of wokeness or the malpractice of wokeness, is it perhaps because people are excluding God from their lives, and so when they don't have external meaning, they try to build meaning within themselves? And that's the question we explored last week. And so we got some comments, Paul, some of the things that people had to say in response to our last video. Somebody wrote, lovely conversation, with a thumbs up. So,
as you know, someone saying love the conversation, it could mean more than just that. Because sometimes some people, there's a lot of fear, even just to comment. Some people are worried. And so they want to give such comments, yes, to like keep going on, but then I'm not yet ready to actually risk. I don't know why it's going to risk, but yeah. So just that comment it means a lot. Just means that maybe they like what you're doing, maybe they would rather do it, but maybe they are not yet in the place where they can do it. So yeah.
You know, the other extreme of that, Paul, is there are other people who love to throw themselves out there on social media and make comments, and they deliberately throw gasoline on the fire, so to speak, or they throw petrol on the fire, so to speak. We've seen a little bit of that too, but not so much of that. But we have seen a little bit of that. But most of the comments that we have are positive. So, but we welcome all comments. We welcome you to challenge us. We welcome you to agree with us. If you strongly disagree with us and you want to passionately criticize our arguments, you're more than welcome to do that, or criticize the things that we're saying.
About that, we're not right in everything we say. We just we're just giving our opinion, and if you disagree, that's your opinion is welcome. You can always reach out.
For those of you that watched last week, you saw that Paul and I don't always agree ourselves on what each other says, because we had a disagreement last week over Pascal's wager. So even we don't totally agree on everything, and we're okay with the fact that we don't agree on everything. So we're okay with the fact that you disagree with us, so feel free to challenge us.
We don't take people disagree with us personally. We don't take it personally. We actually listen and we find it interesting. That's what we're looking for.
And isn't that really part of the problem that we're seeing now with all this modern woke culture? That people will take a disagreement as an attack, or they'll call it hate speech. To so much as disagree is the same thing as hating somebody. You know, if you disagree, for example, with gender identities, that suddenly you're transphobic, which in and of itself is a word that doesn't really have any meaning, because if you think about what a phobia is, claustrophobia, fear of small spaces, what's the fear of heights? There's other... agoraphobia is fear of social, anxiety. If you think about what a phobia really is, it's when you have an anxiety over something. You might have an anxiety over spiders, or you might have an anxiety over heights or being in small spaces. And that's what a phobia technically is. But
it's a psychological problem.
It's a psychological problem. Yeah. But they've taken that term and hijacked it and used it to describe, like when you call somebody transphobic or homophobic.
They're labeling us. They're actually diagnosing us.
They're diagnosing us.
We're sick. We're not.
But we don't have a fear of trans people. We disagree
with some of their narratives.
Right. That is not the same thing as having a phobia or an anxiety over trans people. And so there's a hijacking of terminology that just simply is not an accurate use of terminology in what it was originally intended to be.
There's a place where I worked, and it had a lot of females. I had this discussion about women emancipation with them, and I was telling them, yes, women needed to be empowered, especially a few years back. It was really, it was due. But then along the way, the boy child has been left behind because of A to Z reasons. And well, they listen and they just, shook it off and just be like, okay, no, you know what? You're misogynist. I'm like, okay, really? So just because I'm giving an argument which is not fitting,
your narrative,
or what favors you, doesn't mean I'm hating you.
So we got a second comment here, Paul. A lot of insecurities and problems everywhere. Our world has one solution, and that is God. What happens if you forget God, or what happens if you don't want that solution? You're left with finding a solution within yourself. And can you really find a solution within yourself?
Yeah, maybe not all the time.
And then we had another comment where somebody wrote, "This is a relevant topic, by the way, and it really hits the rock." I think they mean hits the mark, but we get the idea here. But it really hits the rock. And so many people actually have developed a life that doesn't depend on God.
We're telling people that, you are your own God without telling them.
Yeah.
You can do everything on your own. If you can't do it, then you're failing yourself. You're not putting in enough effort. Some things are sometimes beyond our own, our own abilities. And that's why you find that even with however much science has advanced and who are making a lot of money and they're rich and they can afford hospitals, even the billionaires die.
Right.
Because that is beyond human understanding. You have a lot of control about many things in your life, but then that control, regardless, is limited. And at a place where there's a limitation, that's where we place God.
Right.
That's where the plausibility that Bobby was talking about last time comes in.
I got into a discussion last week about the plausibility of the existence of God. Oftentimes people will try to challenge me by saying that I can't prove that God exists. But I'm not trying to prove the existence of God, because technically I can't prove anything except self-existence. But I argue rather that God is the most plausible explanation of how things came into existence. And I think that actually didn't make the final video because it didn't really flow very well in with the conversation we were having. But I did put that conversation into a separate bonus clip. So, we can talk about it because we did talk about this in one of our videos. So it's not so much of a problem that we can't prove the existence of God, because we can't prove anything except maybe perhaps self-existence. I think, therefore I am. As Rene Descartes said. I can prove that I exist because I'm aware of my existence. I think, I feel, and so I can prove to myself that I exist. But beyond that, I really can't prove much of anything else. But I can make reasonable arguments about things. I can make a reasonable argument that Paul exists. I can make a reasonable argument that God exists. And I argue that God is the most plausible explanation of how the universe came into existence. And for those who are interested in hearing more about that argument, go back and find that bonus clip.
Okay, so there's this comment from one, Josephine. Given that it's on YouTube, it's a public channel, so I believe she's comfortable with her name being raised.
Yeah.
So Josephine says, the topic is cutting to the heart of the matter. Thank God. Some members of our society have developed a God complex, and now people are their own God. God has been reduced to a swear word and has been villainized for setting a standard of morality that many have chosen is not for them. This freedom has been stretched into a degradation of what was deemed moral. We have moved so far from God, people are just making things up as they go. We are actually undoing so much of the progress we made over the years because we no longer remember or know why we fought in the first place. Do you even think that there can be morality without God is simply absurd?
The second sentence of this, or actually the third sentence of this comment, says that some members of our society have developed a God complex, and now people are their own God. And I wanted to kind of dive into this a little bit. How people are presenting themselves on social media, because we had a week where we talked about social media, or we talked about people who have these identities and they want to impose those identities onto other people. So they want you to affirm how they identify, and if you don't, they're going to cancel you. They're going to try to get you fired from their job. And is it because perhaps that they are, as this person said, their own God, that they think that their morality, their perception, their value that they place on themselves, or their identity of themselves, is in this kind of a position of godhood. So you need to, in a sense, bow down to it. And if you don't bow down to it, they will try to destroy you.
Well, I'm a traditional person. So I didn't choose to be a man, but I am, and I'm proud that I'm a man. Since I believe in God, then I believe this is something God decided, that, he decided whether I'm a man or a woman, and he thought I should be a man. But now, people with a God complex are like, okay, look at me, I'm a man, but now I don't want to be a man. I'm a female. I'm assigning myself a gender that I find convenient, maybe at the moment. That's, for example, the gender fluid people. So basically, I'm taking the role of God, because we don't decide our gender, our sex, at least, by the contemporary definition of things. But then, apparently, we can choose. Yeah, so you're giving us you're putting us in a God position to decide our sex or gender, which I don't subscribe to.
The thing that kind of surprises me most about this is it's not necessarily that they are identifying as whatever they want to identify with, because that sort of thing has been around for quite a while. What we are seeing that is new is this tendency for them to impose that identity onto other people, that you have to recognize that identity. Or they'll try to get you fired from a job. They'll try to get you canceled. We see all this about cancel culture. I don't think that cancel culture has really infiltrated Ugandan society so much, but like in America, it's impacted thousands of people.
Yeah, the cancel culture is probably in the non-governmental organizations here. Those ones,
NGOs and things like that.
Yeah, the NGOs there, you find that given there's a lot of influence from foreign aid, so you definitely get cancelled if you're in that place. But then, some of us who are out of it, maybe we're a bit liberated. The people who are apparently pushing for human rights and freedom of speech are the ones cancelling people for expressing their enjoying their freedom of speech. Earlier I said I'm a traditional man and I subscribe to traditional values.
That's what we should expand upon. Traditional values, what are those? But go on. I wanna kind of think about this for a second. But go on.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm a traditional man and I subscribe to traditional values. Men are men and they're supposed to provide and protect and all these things, and women ideally are meant to love and submit to their husbands, and there are things that women do that that's what I believe in. But it's okay for you to believe to subscribe to a different school of thought, but that's mine. The traditional values have been under attack for a while. They demonize the traditional masculinity as the patriarchy, and it's here to destroy women and all that. I keep saying feminism was due when it started and it was on right grounds, but then over time it has estranged females, it has estranged relationships. No one knows who is supposed to do what. There's confusion as to what a female should do in the home and what a man should do. It's overlapping roles and gender roles and confusion. No wonder we have very many single people, single mothers, and very many divorces because gender roles are overlapping and it's unclear who is supposed to do what. So the fact that we promoted these rights to that extent where we lost them along the way, because by modernizing the woman, we've lost her in a way. That's why you find many women are not technically very happy in relationships because of what I said earlier. The roles they are very ambiguous. We promoted this, and in a way we are supposed to be sympathetic to anyone who is promoting their own agenda, because you promoted those other people who are suffering. Even as we are suffering, you have to promote us. So in the end, you're put to the cross. My knowledge of the English language is limited, so I'll just go with the word blackmail. But probably Bobby has a better word. So so because we supported women, someone also will come like, okay, you supported women, you supported blacks, and now you should support me as well. I'm a human being. So in the end, you can't not support any budding new oddity. You can't not support them after supporting other people. The fact that you supported other people before and you push their agendas, then you find yourself in a place where you just have to support anything that comes up and you can't challenge it. Even because even the things you supported have a lot of limitations. Have a lot of cons. That are blatant, but you supported them anyway. So we find ourselves supporting things that may not ordinarily make sense, but because, we supported others, we just have to support this.
So it's kind of like that idea you were talking about last week of jumping on a moving train. So we've got this movement of wokeness, which the intention of it is good, to make people aware and alert to issues of social injustice. So then you've got this moving train, this movement that's going forward, and then other people want to hijack that train and jump on it and ride the wave of it and promote whatever sort of agenda that they have, even though it's a malpractice of what wokeness was originally intended to be. And you're talking about traditional values and how we're seeing the erosion of traditional values because the people who are living lifestyles and doing things that contradict traditional values are jumping on this train and saying, hey, we deserve these same sort of rights. And sometimes you hear a lot of things that really don't make a whole lot of sense. For example, with feminism, it started out really good. We want equal opportunities for women. I mean, and that is what we want, Paul.
Yeah.
We're all for women having equal opportunities. But then somewhere along the line, it turned into equal outcomes. So that if we don't have equal outcomes between men and women, it must mean that there's injustice or discrimination taking place, or that the equal opportunities aren't there. Maybe the women have different factors that are causing them to make less money. Maybe, for example, they have chosen not not to be as aggressive in pursuing a career because maybe they're a mother and they want to spend more time with their children, and so they don't pursue a career as aggressively as does a man, or maybe they don't work as many hours as a man. And they say, well, I'm doing the same job, but I'm making less money. But it could be for other factors. And oftentimes the people that promote this ideology of if we don't have equal outcomes, that must mean it's because there's not equal opportunities, when there may be other reasons why you don't have equal outcomes. Like, for example, if you have engineering, and engineering is predominantly men, and there's not as many women, the assumption is that environment is discriminating against women, when in fact it may not be that way at all. It just might mean that biologically men and women are different, and men tend to be more interested in the kind of jobs that are related to engineering.
But that's right. Even in neuropsychology, you know that females, they predominantly use their left brain, and which is good for, like speech. So you find that women are more eloquent and they can advocate for things, more loudly than males. But then males, they use their right brain predominantly, which is good like to things like mathematics, physics. So you find that it's a natural phenomenon, and we're fighting it by trying to force things so that they can suit the narrative of equality. I've worked in the NGO sector, and I've seen this complaint. When a male is shortlisted for an interview and then he sees a female, they don't get in the job because, well, it looks good for the image of the NGO to employ the female. So you find that even these job applications, they're encouraging females to apply, and males are running away from some of these jobs. When they see females shortlisted, they just know they're not getting the job. And so it's, in a way, it's also becoming unfair to the males because we're too aggressive on one side and we're forgetting the other.
So I've been in Uganda now for about 8 months, and I've seen quite a big difference in terms of the culture here, in terms of gender roles, than I do in the United States, where in the United States there tends to be more of a rejection of these, typical gender roles. The traditional kind of roles are seen as sexist. And there's kind of this thing going on in the US right now where they want to deconstruct those traditional gender roles as if those things are all socially constructed. But yet if you look at traditional gender roles, they are not necessarily universal throughout the world, because as Paul talked about, I think in a previous episode, that you have examples of societies or of tribes where you will have women kind of leading and doing what is typically more the man's kind of job in other tribes. So there are tribes like that, but they tend to be the exception. So I'm not making a universal statement that the roles always have to be this way, that way, and they're always going to be that way, and they always should be that way, because you can have exceptions. But the thing that we have to keep in mind is that when the gender roles get switched or reversed in the world, they're usually an exception to the rule, and they're not the norm. But yet these roles, these traditional roles that we talked about, are more common. The traditional gender roles tend to be dominant sort of cultural expectation all throughout the world, that there's biological reasons as to why you see these tendencies of why women tend to be more...
They're more of nurturers.
They're more of, the more of nurturers sort of thing. So there's a biological reason for that. That's a part of what it means to be a woman. And men typically, historically and culturally throughout the world and throughout history have tended to be hunters and protectors. And this is biological. Why is it, for example, that women will, even if they make money, will still want to be with a man who's more successful than they are? But a man has no trouble marrying a woman or being with a woman who's poor. A man's not looking for a woman who's equally or more successful to him. Like I'm using this from my kind of American experience. Like in America, for example, if
I'll give African one.
Yeah. So in America, a man will have no trouble being with a woman who works at McDonald's and makes minimum wage. He'll have no trouble with that. But a woman does not want, generally, there are exceptions, you can always find exceptions, but a woman generally will not want to be with a man who works at McDonald's because he's not successful. The woman would want a man who can support her and sustain the kind of well-being and lifestyle and comfort that she wants to experience.
It's not so different from us. That's why I think this is a biological phenomenon. It's like it's everywhere. Even here, I wanted to go back to, let's say, primary school. Some boys are lucky to date even when they're in primary school. Someone is 6 years old, 7 years old, but they have a girlfriend. But you find that even this 7-year-old boy will be the one to use his canteen money to take care of his girlfriend, and the girl will just keep her food, whatever she, to eat it with her girls. But the boy at 7 will feel the need to lead and provide for his woman, his girlfriend, even at that tender age of 7, 8, 9. And it's the same thing all throughout life. Males are are structured that way. We are wired that way to actually be the ones to provide. And females are wired to expect it.
Yeah.
And so the issue is about employment is that in a way the higher a woman goes with employment and wealth and success, ironically it's pernicious to them in the dating game, because then they become insatiable in relationships. They struggle to get suitors, or even when they get them they struggle to appreciate them, because ideally a woman wants someone who is above them or who is in a better status than them.
Right.
And it's not because women are selfish or whatever, it's just nature.
It's the way that
they want to feel protected, they want to feel provided for, they want to feel loved, and by loved is someone is taking care of them in a way. That's how it is, and those are the gender roles we're talking about.
So however much you want to try to equalize outcome, say for example with job opportunities, you will never be able to do it. You can equalize opportunities. Women should have the same opportunities to pursue whatever career they want to. But the reality is, because of the way we're wired biologically, we're not going to pursue the same careers. And one of my favorite examples of this is Jordan Peterson talks about bricklayers. The fact of the matter is most of the people who work in that kind of job, kind of hard labor kind of jobs, are men. Do you want to equalize that as well? But of course, women generally will not want to work, those kind of jobs.
And it's not their problem. It's just, like you said, it's biological.
Right, it's biological. There's nothing wrong with that.
There are physical attributes that men have that can, can be resilient in such jobs that females do not typically have unless otherwise, extraordinary situations. But on average, a female would rather do some other kind of work than just, bricklaying.
Right. And I don't know about the psychological science, like the social sciences, Paul, your experience. Do you find that there's more females?
Yeah, there's many females, in the history of psychology, they said initially they used to complain, and rightly so, because that's why I subscribe to feminism in a way, but in the traditional sense of feminism,
equal opportunity.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean we get equal outcome.
Yeah, so in the early days of psychology, there are females who contributed a lot of work, in building the field of psychology, but they were not recognized. So maybe their husbands took the plaudits for it. And so there was a statement that in psychology, even the lab rats were male and white. Yeah, because it was a racist time and the patriarchy was, at its highest. So females were not allowed to. Okay, they're not per se not allowed, but they had less recognition as well as the blacks. And maybe then it really stood out. But if you look at how it looks right now, things are different. There's a lot of female psychologists. If you go to the universities, there are more females in school. Since like 2 years back, the main university in Uganda has had more females than males. That's just another problem.
Right.
We can talk about some other time.
But I think also, and just from my experiences, because I'm a science educator. Well, I actually taught in the classroom, and I primarily taught earth science classes for pre-service teachers. These were the ones who were going to college to prepare to be teachers in the U.S. And so I would teach earth science classes for these pre-service teachers, these elementary, these lower kind of grade levels. And almost all of the students that I had in my class who were preparing to be teachers were women. So there might have been one or two or maybe at most 3 men in my class in any given semester. Is it because there's a discriminatory environment going on within teaching that makes men not feel welcome, and we need to equalize the outcomes with that?
Well, this is something I've experienced because I've been through the education system in Uganda. I don't think it's typically different from outside, given that our system is just a copy and paste from out. Anyway, so there's a lot of incentives given to females to remain in school. Well, technically there's no incentives to keep males in school. And as we progress to higher levels of learning, you find less and less males in school. And so you have more females in school. More females are getting educated, and males are just dropping out into drugs, and they're just on their own basically. Like now in our country, it's a third world country, males run out of the country, maybe they go and work as, I call them slaves in Dubai, in those Arab countries, because they're really paid very little to do very much work. School is no longer attractive, And what are the incentives I'm talking about? You find that from the earlier ages of studying, the girls, they call them the senior woman, who is going to, once in a while out of assembly, girls stay behind. This is what life looks like as a girl. They teach them how to use their sanitary, material, how to deal with relationships. They warn them about what life looks like. But then the boys, just go and play football. They go and play soccer in an American language. And that's about it. Then we move to secondary school, same thing happens. When I was younger, they used to cane, like strokes of cane. And they never used to cane girls as much. They used to cane boys so much. So many boys could drop out of school because they felt like they were being tortured.
Wow.
So it was discouraging to study for a boy. But then the girls.
Does that still happen?
No, it's way less because the president came out against it.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah. But then while I was studying, it was happening. So boys were really pushed out of school indirectly, and so some of them drop out because they lose morale for school. But then, that happened. So, but then even on an institution, on a advocacy level or on the national level, you find that when you're going to the major universities, institutions, girls get a bonus point, and the boys don't. So initially, yes, there were very few girls and it was inevitable. It made sense, but now it's no longer making sense because even the girl in a school, or a privileged school in the city is getting an extra point, but then the boy from the very rural, remote places of the country, having way less, quality education is not getting that point. But then someone who is already performing well is getting an extra point. So right now, factually, we have more girls in the higher institutions of learning
because they're not getting through primary school. The boys are not getting through primary school as much as the girls are, and so they're not going.
They keep reducing as you go higher.
So the boys aren't making it as much to the universities. But the girls are.
Because and there are very many factors because even the humanitarian aid is being pushed towards the support of females. So a lot of emancipation has happened in the direction and less on the other side. So even as a parent, you risk being at odds with the law enforcement if your girl is not studying. But then it's a lesser risk if a boy is not studying. So you find that even parents are prioritizing the girl child. Everyone is prioritizing. And then what's happened to the boy child? The boy child is left behind. Interestingly, these girls are not going to marry girls. When they finish school and they're very many well-educated because they're preparing, technically our schools are preparing white-collar jobs. So they get the white-collar jobs, the better pay and all that. But then problem comes in that they will need a partner. And when they need a partner, like we said earlier, ideally a girl would like to get a partner who is a bit superior to her. Yeah, we may argue all we want, but it's a fact.
They're not going to get one that's superior.
So they're not going to get because the ratios are no longer proportional. Many of these girls are going to find themselves, scrambling for the few males who are their level or above them.
And so you have a large number of females competing for a small number of males. Basically, that's what you have.
Exactly. So what are the chances that these males are going to play them round robin? And because the supply of them is very low and the demand for them is very high. So what do you expect? They're going to take advantage. It's more like in economics, monopoly. So if I'm the owner supplying a product, then I'll probably manipulate the prices as much as I want. So same with the dating game. So you find that these guys, they taint the name of males as bad because they will just keep cherry picking and wasting these girls' lives and creating many single mothers and etc. and heartbreaks. Then that's how you find says all men are stupid, all men are fools, all men are bad. It's not really that. It's because few males are worthy in that term to these girls. There are few men are that worthy. And they all want those apparently worthy ones. But then the other ones who are less worthy, no one gives them a look. So we have unbalanced things. And then we're complaining.
I think it's a good place to wrap it up. Do you think, Paul? We've covered a lot about what's happening to traditional roles within society. And a lot of it, Paul, is just simply not very good. Where are we heading? We seem to be heading down a road where there's people that are trying to construct things according to how they want them to be, and it just doesn't line up with how men and women are wired biologically.
So in the end, we're self-destructing.
Yeah. So see you in 7 days. Bye for now.
Bye.